Welcome back, friends. Today we're diving into some of the biggest stories shaking up U.S. politics on September 2nd, 2025. There's a lot happening in Washington and across the country, from military decisions to legal battles, education funding to foreign policy moves. So let's break it all down together in a way that's easy to follow and makes you think about where the country is heading. First up, one of the biggest headlines. The Trump administration has announced that the U.S. Space Command headquarters will officially relocate from Colorado to Huntsville, Alabama. This decision, reversing a move made during the Biden years, has huge implications for the local economy. Huntsville, often nicknamed Rocket City for its strong aerospace and defense history, could see tens of thousands of new jobs and billions in economic activity. Supporters are celebrating, but critics argue the change was politically motivated. What do you think? Is this about national defense strategy or about rewarding political allies? For more details, check out the full coverage from AP News. On the economic front, tariffs are once again dominating headlines. After a federal appeals court ruled that Trump's sweeping, reciprocal tariffs went beyond the legal powers of the presidency, the administration wasted no time in asking the Supreme Court to intervene. Officials argue that without these tariffs, the U.S. risks losing its competitive edge to countries that heavily tax American exports. Critics, however, warn that the tariffs are sparking global trade tensions and hurting U.S. businesses. If the Supreme Court agrees to hear the case quickly, it could set the stage for one of the most important trade law battles in recent history. You can read more about the legal showdown in this report from the Wall Street Journal. Meanwhile, another tariff idea from the White House is raising eyebrows, a proposal to slap up to 200% taxes on imported drugs. Think about that for a second. While the stated goal is to bring pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the U.S., such steep tariffs could also drive up the cost of essential medicines and even cause shortages. That's a tough balancing act, protecting American industry versus ensuring affordable healthcare. If these tariffs move forward, how do you think it would affect ordinary families who already struggle with prescription costs? Shifting gears to education, there's finally some good news for California. After months of disputes, the Trump administration has released nearly $900 million in withheld federal education funds. These funds are earmarked for migrant students and English language learners, and school districts across the state say the money is desperately needed. Education leaders are calling this a victory for fairness, while critics note that it never should have been withheld in the first place. Education is one of those areas that hits close to home for many of us. Do you think funding decisions should be tied to political battles? If you'd like to see more, check out this detailed piece from the Times of India. Another major development comes from Los Angeles, where a federal judge ruled that the administration's deployment of National Guard troops during immigration protests violated federal law. The decision cited the Posse Comitatus Act, which restricts the use of federal troops in domestic law enforcement. The ruling puts limits on how far the federal government can go when responding to protests and unrest. The Trump administration is expected to appeal, but this sets up a critical legal battle over executive power. This case raises a fundamental question. Should presidents have the authority to use troops within U.S. cities, or should the courts continue to push back? On the global stage, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent suggested that the U.S. may impose new sanctions on Russia in hopes of pressuring Moscow over its actions in Ukraine. At the same time, international financial leaders like Christine Lagarde have warned that political interference in the Federal Reserve could destabilize not only the American economy, but also global markets. In times of economic uncertainty, the independence of central banks is often seen as essential to stability. Do you think politics should ever influence monetary policy? And finally, in a symbolic but controversial move, President Trump announced that Rudy Giuliani will receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Supporters argue Giuliani deserves recognition for his public service, while critics say it undermines the prestige of the nation's highest civilian award given his recent legal troubles. Regardless of where you stand, the announcement has certainly stirred debate. Congress, meanwhile, is back in session and immediately faces the tough task of avoiding a government shutdown. With partisan divides growing deeper, the next few weeks could prove crucial for the functioning of government. And with oversight investigations into high-profile cases like Jeffrey Epstein continuing, Washington shows no sign of slowing down. So, to recap, Space Command is on the move to Alabama, tariffs are facing Supreme Court scrutiny, California schools are finally getting nearly $1 billion in funding, and legal limits are being tested in Los Angeles. Add to that new sanctions discussions, debates over the Fed, and the controversy over Giuliani's medal, and it's clear that the Trump administration is shaping headlines on every front. What's your take on all of this? Are these bold moves strengthening the country, or are they creating more division at home and abroad? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, share this with friends who love staying up to date, and of course, subscribe so you never miss a deep dive into the latest news. Until next time, stay informed and stay curious.